fairy wrens. So with most of the passerines, remember in the back of your book if you want to find the page. And we're going to be jumping around a fair bit tonight. So, yeah, RSI threat warning. And what I really want you to do is, whenever we're looking at the wrens, get your little wren pages out. And once you've worked out what it is male-wise, look at the female and look at the distinctive characteristics. So the colour of the bill, colour of the law, remember the law, and the colour of the eye ring and the tail. And just start to familiarise yourself with that, because with good binoculars you can easily see those characters. You can see where there's a little bit of black in here. You can see where there's a lack of eye ring. There's characters that you can quickly teach yourself. And how do I know that's a female? Because the bill's brown, not black. Yep. Now, in this book, they use the word eclipse for the basic plumage. And remember your symbol for male. Does everyone remember? Symbol for female. Just to remind yourself, you've got the male. Okay. So, superb fairy wren. Everyone's happy? Yep. They usually have quite a plain tail. And then you've got that lovely combination of brown through the bill and around the eye. Okay, next one. Remember, there's two that we need to separate. Quail, which are about page 22, 23, 25, something like that. Very early. And then you've got the button quail, which are about page 230 or something like that, I think. Okay. 221? Yep. So that's the button quail, and then the quail are, what is it, 25? 23. No, they're quite different when you look at their genetics. They were originally, if you go back to your older books, you'll see that button quail and quail are on pages next to each other. They were thought to be related. But when they looked at the genetics, they're a long way apart. Now, these have a really distinctive call, and anyone from a farm will recognise this, I'm sure, particularly where you get ranker grass around the edge of a wetter area. You'll get these guys. So, here's the call. I've heard them on EP a number of times across various parts. Yeah, lots of quail. So this is the brown quail. The other one that we get a lot of is the the stubble quail, which is the pippyweed or pick-the-weed. Yep. So the brown quail is less common, and the not much smaller, a little bit, but it's not normally shown on the maps for EP, but I have heard it all over EP. It's a very distinctive call.
Can't say I've heard it, but
Yeah, but just
I'll pay more attention.
yeah. Okay, so all happy with that? Yeah. Yep. Tail's not where you think it should be, sticking straight up. Yeah. Now these are a pretty special one that we have on Southern EP. You either get them in Garnia swamps or you get them out in heathy areas. And with the fires that burnt through from the Wangari across, wiped out a lot of the populations of these. And for these birds, a gap between bushes of a couple of metres is like a chasm. They just don't cross it very easily. So where you've got 100 metres from one end of a thick bit of bush to another start of a next thick bit of bush, they just don't cross it. So it's really hard to get them to repopulate areas. Yep. There's two there. So I was looking at a blue-breasted fairy wren, and then I heard this faint little call. They have the faintest of calls, and I looked around behind me, and there were these two guys sitting up.
Is that on our peninsula?
Yeah.
Is it the Mallee emu?
No, because they're not on our peninsula. The Mallee emu wren's the one that's sort of been wiped out with the fires in Narkat. This one's a southern. And I'll play you the call, but if you're older, this might be a bit harder for you to hear. Here you go.
I heard that a lot, that sound, yeah.
Very quiet.
Yeah, on. I heard that. No. Look for the food.
Yeah, I can hear it.
If you're hearing this call, they're probably about less than 10 metres away from you.
The superb one got a bit louder, it's sort of the same.
Yeah, louder though.
Bit louder.
And not quite as
Not quite as rapid.
singular as this, you know.
Yeah, I like it.
That's right.
Yep, emu wren. And if you've got Garnia swamplands, they'll be all through it. And then where you get the nice heathy stuff, you get them in that.
Yeah, I can. Got to stand on it.
If it's going squawk, you probably stand on it, yeah.
So it's actually quite busy.
Yeah, it's a real...
Yeah. She's...
Yeah. So you've got to be... It's got to be a nice still day, and you're walking through and you just hear the faintest. And then you've got to find it, because they don't come out in the open very much. So most of the ones I've seen have been with binoculars at about 4 or 5 metres in the middle of a bush, and I get to see the bit of blue or the brown. So the male has that beautiful blue throat and the lovely brown head, and then there's the striations through the eye. And the female's a lot plainer. And they get their name because of the tail feathers, which look like the emu feathers. So southern emu wren. Be aware of them because they're nationally endangered.
So they would be the ones that are out of the golf course, like out here?
No, they're southern.
Different altogether.
You get them across into the Todd Reservoir area. Where the Wangari fire burnt, they've moved a little bit further to the north from the start of that Wangari fire burn, but they haven't moved back into the habitats they used to occupy more across towards the Todd. And then down all around Coffin Bay, all through to Lincoln National Park, they're all through that area. If you go to Gunya Beach and you go to the back car park at Gunya Beach, you hear them there all the time. If you're going into Coffin Bay, you know, when you get to Kelladie Bay, just the first time as you approach Kelladie, they're often around the edge of that. There's little, the road goes off to the right to the airport.
Yep.
Yeah, they're usually in there, in that part of the world.
So how close are they genetically to each other, the fairy wren and the emu wren? Are they fairly close?
Yeah, they're, can you see the genus? They're a different genus. So this is Malurus.
Oh, okay.
So they're in a similar. There's a group of similar birds that are all in separate genuses that are closely related to each other. So same families, that sort of thing, and then subfamilies and yeah.
Right.
These are a bird that were not irregularly recorded, not too irregularly recorded up, particularly from Woodner through to Ceduna, down to Streaky Bay in that sort of triangle up through there. They're a bird that's nationally critically endangered. They have very definite requirements regarding the grass height and the density of tussocks. So if you have the tussocks too high and too far apart, or too high and too close together, or too low, and they just need the right sort of.
And do they move around if the environment changes?
Yeah, we recorded one up on the Illyri Plains, just down from the Gammon Ranges. After 2 years of really good rainfall, we had them out there. But their main population is in northern Victoria, New South Wales, on a few farms there, and they haven't been recorded for quite a while over here on our peninsula. But it doesn't mean that they won't turn up now and then. When things are right, they move around. They're an interesting bird because, unlike most birds, it's the female that's the most colourful. The male is much blander, and they're polyandrous, which means that the female will has to attract the male. They mate, the female lays the eggs, and then she disappears, and the male is left with the eggs, and he hatches them and brings them up. She runs off then and finds another male and will lay eggs. So the males are selecting for the good females because they're the ones who are putting all the energy into raising and hatching the young, raising them up into adulthood. So the female has to show that she is of high quality. And remember where the reds and the oranges come from. So that's diet based. So those colour and intensity of those feathers is about the types of food she eats and how good she is at obtaining those foods. So plains wanderer, the female is the colourful one, and the male, they're not that common, but they might be here, and you might be lucky. So
you said the Flinders, the northern Flinders, you said.
yeah, over just west of the Gammon Ranges. We had one recorded there. So here's the plains wanderer. This is the adult female.
Very quiet.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of birds that do this, you know, sort of. We heard some of them tonight with the bronze wings.
Are they more nighttime?
Yeah. So these are active at night. They come out and feed at night. And if you go into the places where they're found in Victoria, the stations they're found on, you can actually book in and they'll take you on a tour at night and do spotlighting to help you see them. Okay. We had one of these last year just out west of Cummins. There's a little couple of wetlandy areas. There were at least one that was around it, feeding for a couple of months. That's one name that they have, yep. Yep. They're actually quite rare now south of, in the bottom half of Australia. If you go up to the northern half of Australia, they still seem to be doing well. Yeah, and people don't quite understand what's causing them to be so uncommon down south. Australian bustard?
My dad calls them bastards.
Bastards?
Yeah.
Yeah. When they are doing their mating displays, you get quite a spectacular display of the feathers down the throat, like a big bib. And they boom. They have a quite distinctive booming call. They describe it in here as a huff and a roar. That's the roar. And here's the huff.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. This kid from around the centre.
That's pumping it up. Sounds like it's you.
Yeah, yeah.
Pumping it up.
Okay, Australian bustard. Often heard, seldom seen. Even less seldom is there a picture taken. And I didn't get this one. Another one of those species that just found on the bottom of EP.
See the black and the white and the top knot and the grey.
Oh, done. Yeah. So it's closely related to the wedge-bills, but they're more a desert bird. Yeah. It looks a lot like a wedge-bill, which it's related to. Yeah. Whipbird. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a recording of the local version of the call, but as you go through the different populations from southwest WA across through to our peninsula and over, their calls change. So I'll play you the one that's most similar to the local subspecies. Often related to a creaky cartwheel. It just goes round and round. And it just goes a repeat of that same pattern. So if I go further to the west, and the one here is different from both of those, but it's more like this one. And you just hear them singing away. Yeah, I like, and this is a male and female. That's the two of them interacting. So if you're standing between them, you'd hear one do one and then the other do the other.
So what is this one we're looking at?
So it's a western whipbird. It's locally restricted, so there's not a big area they occupy on our peninsula, just down south. Yeah, so you get them right through Lincoln and Coffin Bay, but they like particular fire histories. So if you've got a long time unburnt, they're less common, and if you've got a very recent fire, they're less common. There's a period where they like the fire history to be between one and the other. So when we do management of the burns in the park, one of the things we're thinking about is how much of the park is in that age class for this particular bird. And yeah, you often hear them, and you'll get sneaking glimpses of them as they whip into the bush and disappear. But to actually see one out in the open quite distinctly is not that common. If you wander along very quietly with the call, you'll get a chance to see them. But you have to hang around for a while to be lucky. So the other one, let me just change my location. The other one, if you go towards the east, is the western whipbird. Oh, sorry, is the eastern whipbird. What's going on here? Sorry, my... Nah. No, it's just playing up. So if you've been in eastern Victoria, you know the whip crack that you get? And then there's a after it. That's the male and the female. My electronics is failing me. So here's the eastern whipbird. That's the male. That's the female answering.
I heard one the other day.
Not here. No. Over in the eastern. So, no, not really.
That's what I heard. I was wondering what the hell it was.
Okay, I wonder what it was. So that's sort of Melbourne and east of Melbourne up through Sydney. I wonder what it was then. Yeah. I'll let me think about that one. What it might be, but that's the western whipbird anyway.
Well, there's a little dot for the western whipbird here right at the bottom. Do they see? They've got a little arrow pointing to it because it's so
Oh,
small.
for the western, yeah, but not the eastern.
Oh, western. Yeah. Do they sound similar? Or not?
No, this was the whip, and this was the squeaky wheel.
Ah.
No. But right part of the world. And I want to do some research on these and actually get people to walk through and just record where they hear them with fire history. Short-tailed grass wren. Oh, well, all of them, the western grass wren, yeah. Okay, these guys, you get them, particularly Hinks, Hambidge, Bascombe Wells, right up through. You get them down south, not as common, but you do get them down south in the parks. But as you move up into that mallee country, and they like reasonably soon after a fire. You get them in areas reasonably soon after a fire, and quite a distinctive call. Here's the call for you. They're a really annoying bird. The name is good. They are quite shy. You see them fly behind a bush and they run behind the bush, and then you fly behind the next bush. Shy heathwren. Good. Okay, you've got the nice brown cap and then the white supercilium, the eyebrow, the strongly striated breast, and there's the brown rump, and then they have the very distinctive black tail with the white tip at the end.
So his tail looks more straight up and down.
Yeah, well, yeah, but the way they cock their tail is quite distinctive. Yeah? Okay, yep. So, obvious call, and if you are camped up in Hambidge and in the morning they're calling all around you, places like that. How do you know it's not a blue-breasted? Taste the blue-breasted, sadly.
Well, it's got a little red patch.
They both have. And the colour? There's two it could be.
Lovely.
No, not here.
Oh, not here, right.
But in the same group, closely related. So you've got variegated or blue-breasted. And they're both on EP. The blue-breasted, if you're down in Coffin Bay or Lincoln National Park, it's probably a blue-breasted. And as you go north, the variegated starts to come in, and as you head up past Lock and that sort of thing, the blue-breasted starts to fade out and the variegated keeps going. So they overlap a lot. And to tell them apart, you've got to compare these feathers with those feathers. If they're the same colour, then it's a blue-breasted. If they're a different colour, if this one's blue and that one's more purplish or bluey purplish, then it's the variegated. But if you look at the females are different. The female blue-breasted has a little bit of black in the law. Can you see that?
Yeah, but the variegated is stronger.
And the variegated has a really strong black through the laws.
Also the wings.
And if you look, if you look at the contrast between the under the body and on top of the body, there's a bigger contrast. Tail colour?
Bit darker on the
Yeah, no, can't tell because it changes shape and depends on the angle, and there's all sorts of things muck you up there. But they both similar habitats. Yeah, low in the scrub, like a superb fairy wren. So same sort of habitats. If you're over in Coffin Bay and you're out near Gunya Beach out there, you'll get them right through that low, heathy scrubland. Anyway, yes. So you're trying to compare, if you're seeing the male, you're trying to compare what you see here with what you see there, and you've got to think about shadows and everything else, because that can make, but if they're out in the sun and you're getting a good view of them, if there's a distinct contrast between those two, you know you've got your variegated. Yeah, but the simplest thing, quite simply, is just the contrast.
But yeah, that one's black and the blue breast like, where's that black and blue? It's like they're swapped around.
And it's usually in the shade, and it's because it's underneath the bird. And yeah, I haven't seen any difference, but I can feel comfortable with the contrast.
I've had them fly right into my kitchen.
Yeah.
Through my veranda, and my kitchen door was open onto the veranda.
And where's this?
At home.
Where's
they were
home?
Flown out of Angara.
Oh, yeah.
They flew from outside on my window ledge.
Yeah.
And they came in the veranda door, had to go around the corner, and then they came in my kitchen door that was open. And then because they were mating, and all they could think about was each other, they weren't worrying about anything else.
Yeah.
Chasing each other.
But for people who come from outside of Eyre Peninsula, that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make if you've locked into the idea that you know a variegated fairy wren, and you look down here and that's what you see. To actually understand that there's blue-breasted here as well, and you've got to be able to tell them apart, it's a real challenge.
White orange. And it's got that white line above its eye. White throat and all the white under the eye. The other, they've got the white, but they're darker.
These guys tend to be not in the middle of EP. Now we've got campestris here. So it's a type of call that makes you sit up and think, oh, that's interesting, and go and have a look, and hopefully you'll see the guy. But you need to be aware, so that this is the Rufus field wren, and this is the shy heath wren. So It's the one we had before, the shy heathwren. Okay, so they are different, but it's actually quite amazing how you can confuse yourself. Here we go back to this Rufus fieldwren. Particularly along the coast, in that heathy stuff along the coast, you hear these. And you've got the cocktail like before, but you haven't got that rump. And notice how these striations are not as strong, they're not as thick. And then still got the white eyebrow, but it's not giving you that really brown rump like we had in the shy heathwren. Yeah, that's probably a bit about the sun that it's sitting up in, whereas that would be more typical. Okay, Rufus fieldwren, happy with that? Yeah. I love the way they can flare them out. It's when you're taking pictures of them, it's really quite spectacular.
That's what I've noticed since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Do you know those yowies?
Yes. Yeah.
I used to collect them, and that was one of my favourite.
Ah, that's good.
So that one I can see like that.
And we have a local subspecies which has a very distinctive bib here. So look at the different subspecies that are around. Yeah, it has. Yeah. And see the different colourings that you get?
Yes, variations.
Yeah. And there's the female. The thing about the female is, notice, what's it look like? Which female does it look like? Which one did we see today that looked like this? The first one we did. The superb. It had the brown and the brown law and the brown eye, but the tail, look at the tail. It's a blue tail. And you can't see the tail here, it's tucked away. So you wouldn't be able to tell this apart from the superb female without seeing the tail. So you'd see the eye and think, oh, that could be this or that. Then you'd have to have a look at the tail. And then, because they go from the basic into the alternate plumage, you get the transition. So this is a moult just of the body feathers, not the flight feathers or the tail feathers. Happy with that? If you're trying to identify that, you can confuse it with a number of different fairy wrens. That gets tricky. So it depends on how much food's available and how successful that one is, but you're looking at quite a few weeks.
If what they eat makes the colour, what are they eating?
Oh, no, remember with the blues, that's a physical coloration. So that's about the structure of the feather, and it's about where you have the melanins and the way in which the light moves through the feather and back out. And the collagens. Okay, so splendid fairy wren, beautiful bird.
Actually, these ladies that get around red hair and blue hair and that is that a colour? Or?
It's just a light.
It's a good question. Well,
What are we pleasing with?
we had a good we had a good question about the physical coloration and what made it different from the chemical stuff, that you know, the carotenoids, that sort of thing. And for physical colour, if you're going to destroy that, you actually have to smash the feather to destroy the structure of the feather to make it stop giving the colour. Whereas if you've got orange or red or yellow, it's actually right through the feather, and as you smash it up, you just get smaller and smaller bits of yellow and orange feather. But if you actually smash the structure of the feather that's using physical coloration, it'll stop having that ability to do what it does. Okay. We're either looking at quail or button quail. Quail we're at 22, 23, and the little button quail were 220?
223.
223? Yeah. The call. This is the female's advertising call. Another one of those hooms. Catch a lot of these when you're doing trapping for reptiles and small mammals with drift nets. They fall in, they hit the drift net, walk along it, fall down the pit, and you catch them. The ones I've caught have all smelt really, really bad. I don't know what it is, but really, really, like dry reaching, really bad. Horrible. Yeah, still alive, yeah. Well, I don't know whether it's because they shit all over the place or whatever, but oh, fair income. Oh, yeah, it could be. It's certainly deterrent for me. It was, yeah. Anyway, so little button quail. Looks so innocent. That's right. Beware. And the worst part is you're usually out in the middle of nowhere and you've got very little water and you're not washing your hands. Used to be thought of as quite rare, but when they started looking harder, they found them more often. Just hard to see. The ones I've seen really annoying. The female is extremely bland, doesn't have that bit of red throat, and the males have to turn towards you in the sun, and they're one of those birds that flies behind bushes and runs, and then flies behind bush and runs, and you just don't get a good look at them. Yeah. So you need calls.
My ears aren't very good either. I'm terrible for a young person. I got a bit deaf in this ear and my eye is down. Depends on what it is though, like.
The annoying part about these guys, like some of the birds they do mimicry. So you hear weebill in here and red throat, and that's the male. Notice the female. 339. Notice the female is pretty bland.
She doesn't have it, so how can they call it a red throat if the female doesn't get a red throat?
Yes. All good? Okay. Now remember, with quail, they have one tone on the top of the wings as they fly away. Button quail have two-tone. So look at the button quail, the pictures on 223. Look at them flying away. Notice that you can see two colours, a black and a brown.
Oh yeah, that's the top one. The little button girl.
Yeah, and there's a darker and a lighter is probably a better way of putting it. And often what happens is they burst out in front of you. You see them fly off low, and then just before they land, they sort of bank up, and you get a look at their feathers. So you're following them with your binos, and you'll see them bank up and then drop into a bush or something like that. And you get a look, and you see two colours, or two tones, a dark and a light, and you know it's a button quail. If they bank up and you just see the one tone, then you know it's a quail. This is the stubble quail, and do you remember the call for the stubble quail? They're out in the wheat fields. Pick the wheat, picky wheat, pippy wheat. So, very distinctive call, and you hear it in spring all through our fields. So, here we go. Pippy wheat or pick the wheat, all through our fields. It's a common call. Yep. On our peninsula, we have 3 species in this group. It's pretty special. If you've got an older bird book, you won't have all the species. They've been split up. Andrew Black, who is a guy who does research in an SA museum, he's spent a lot of time looking at the genetics of all these guys, and he's split them into species based on the genetics, and then gone out and checked it all with the birds in the field. But they're all pretty much endangered. There's all sorts of threats, particularly with the way we graze, and fires. The way the habitats they need are affected by grazing and fires. You're looking at the mustache, the brown around the eyes, the patterns over the ears, the ear coverts, and then the other general tone. What makes you sure it's a striated?
Well, it's got the little lines bit on the ears,
Yep.
and it's got the black coming out.
There's some that have that mustache that's black, but they have white flecks in it. This doesn't have the white flecks. So just you're right. I'm just wanting you to be very certain, because you don't get much of a look at these guys. They're hopping around through the spinifex or whatever, and they disappear quite quickly. So you've got to know what you're looking for.
So what is it?
It's a grass wren. What's the page for everyone?
329.
329. So it'll be early in the passerines. Yep, keep going from there on. There you go. We'll spend more time on these. This is the only one of this group that's in here this week, but just to get you to start thinking about them, because there's a whole bunch of wrens that we've worked through today, just to be aware of the different ones.
What's the most common little wren that would hang around common?
Probably superb fairy wren.
It looks a bit more plain, like grey brown.
Wren.
Or something similar to a wren.
Yeah.
Only tiny and they,
Scrub wren.
Could
Little white flecks, streaks on the breast, white eyebrow.
And it comes into my shed.
Okay, could be. Yep.
They sit on the edge of the table and watch me paint.
Ah, okay, that's fun. You see these a fair bit on Southern EP. What group? Quail or button quail? You've seen it flying away there? This is the female. Another one of those low humming, repeated humming calls. Yeah. And this is the male. No, I put it up before, but everyone's so intent on the picture, they don't see it. Yeah.
But what did it for us was a red eye.
Ah, yes. One thing about eye colour, if you can see the colour, it's really helpful a lot of the time. But if you're not seeing the colour, it doesn't mean the colour's not there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So if you see red eye, then it's a red eye. But if you haven't seen a red eye, it could still be a red eye, you just haven't seen it. The light's not right. So, you know what I mean?
Be looking at it.
Yep. So, if you do get the colour, good. Remember that, because the colour's there. But if you haven't seen the colour, if it just looks plain black, it could still be there. You just haven't got the angles right or whatever. Okay. One of the most beautiful birds, because when they do sit up in the sun, they're just spectacular. Yeah, and look at the females. No makeup. No makeup. No brown ring around the eye, no law, and the bill is quite strawy coloured.
So when do they look like that?
That's up on Dirk Hartog Island. They have that black subspecies.
Okay. Well, that's out on the west.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
I think it describes it down. I think it's Dirk Hartog W. No, that's good. Dirk Hartog, there you go. The nominate race, yeah.
We said we could raise our hands.
Now, with these guys, the first time I identified them, I was back at that stage where I just needed to see the male. I wasn't thinking about the females at all. And the male's another one of those annoying ones. They fly around behind bushes, and I spent hours chasing it until I finally got a good look at it. And, you know, white wings, no worries. But if you do a squeaky little call, these females will come up around you all over the place. All I had to do was look at the stupid females and I would have known what I was looking at. But being the beginner, I chased the male because that was all I could really identify it by. But now that you've started to think about what's happening around the head and with the tail, they're quick and easily identified. And they do look just plain Jane like that.
Yeah, I'm still seduced by the colour.
Yeah. So, white-winged fairy wren, all good? Particularly as you head north from here and you get out into the Kinopody parts of the world and low acacias and things like that, yeah.
It's amazing what you can see when you open your eyes up and take notice. It's like that was not a road. It's one of the ones you had at the school. I don't know what it was initially, what it told me.
No, I said I'm not telling you because I didn't want to tell you. You've got to work it out later.
These pictures it looks like a tree creeper, but it's not a tree. Tree creeper. It's not 100%, that's just from the back of the book.
It's a lovely call you hear in the evenings.
Yeah.
You get them out through the mallee country on the ground, feeding on the ground.
Wow.
Can you tell us what it is, because I can't find it?
They're in the quail-thrush part of the world. And this is their little contact call. Just a high-pitched little seep.
Very high pitch.
Yeah, it is. So, chestnut-back quail-thrush, all happy with that? Female's a lot blander. But what you first see is that V. So you've got the supercilium and the mustache. Quite distinctive.
And it's darker, not cinnamon coloured, so that's how you know it's not the cinnamon one.
Yeah, the cinnamon has quite a different call too. But you see them in the same parts of the world up north. So if you were up in the Gawler Ranges, I've seen them through there. And I'd expect to see them further south, but I just haven't. Chestnut back. Okay, good. Next one.
No, don't give us much, do you?
Oh, come on. There's everything you need. You've been spoilt. It's very apparent. What can we see? What's this white thing called? Good. Supercilium, eyebrow. You've got a little fleck of white at the bottom of the eye ring. You've got striations on the breast. And there's a little white fleck in the wing that you can see there. I told you there's everything you need. Just got to look. And the subspecies on Eyre Peninsula has the striations on the breast, which are different from the other subspecies.
So is that a quail or double quail?
No.
Similar.
That's actually just coming out of its nest.
Oh, okay.
I saw it taking feathers into the nest to line its nest. Anyone guess what group? No, too small for that. And the pipits and larks are much more distinctively coloured. It's a type of wren. Scrub wren, good. Well done.
You're the winner.
What page?
337.
337.
Do that to the man.
There you go. Well done, sir.
Well, it's all there.
So, white-browed scrub wren. In the book you'll see that there's quite a few different subspecies as you move around the coast. We've got maculatus here, and I don't actually have maculatus call, but this is a little bit similar. You get, this is probably the most familiar one that you'll hear in the bush. That little chick. But the one over here, it is quite quite patterned, quite distinctly patterned with the striations down the breast. The other subspecies all have quite plain breasts. But if you look in the wing, right up at the wrist, they've got those little distinctive white lines around those feathers on the little bastard wing or lula. And you see those two little flecks quite distinctively. It's often the first thing you see, just the two little flecks in the wing there. So, white-browed scrub wren. The challenge with this one is there's a shadow right across the head, but you can see the true colour more here. Yeah, but that's not going to be how you pick it. You're looking for the ear coverts versus the head, and they're the same colour. But you just have to watch it long enough to make sure that as it moves in and out of light, you're picking it.
Shadow tricking you.
Yeah.
Because that nearly tricked me. I looked at that and thought, oh no, it's got a different colour then.
You can see as you head up through here that it is actually, you know, all of the same sort of ilk. So, yes. And that group of wrens with the red backs, they're quite easily identified as a group. The challenge is teasing them apart as a species. And on Eyre Peninsula, if you're down at Coffin Bay or Lincoln and you're seeing these, you can be pretty certain that they're blue-breasted. And then as you head north, then the variegated start to appear. And finally, by the time you're getting up to the Gawler Ranges, Woodner or whatever, then the blue-breasteds drop out and the variegateds are here. Oh, in the picture. Okay. Okay, I've never really noticed that. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I see what you mean. So blue-breasted. With these guys, and I've been out doing surveys, and I've heard them and I've heard them, and I'm looking everywhere, and finally you get to see one, but you often hear them long before you see them. And they have this really neat little call. You get this one as well? But you often hear this. Just a little...
Like a wren.
Yeah, high pitched, and they're out often in open, rocky sort of ground, just like this. But the rotters, you'll see them, they know you're there, and they'll crouch low and they'll be running low across the ground and running away from you. And you've heard them, but to actually see them and find them is the next challenge. But you can pick them as quail-thrush. They've got that same sort of V, with the mustache and whatever else is much more solid in this one. It's a quail-thrush.
What page are we finding?
Do you remember before?
Oh, the back where the thrushes.
Yeah, quail-thrushes. Oh, not with the quails.
No.
Yeah.
What page?
396.
We had, yeah.
It's a lot lighter.
Oh, right. I think it's the end of the night for me.
It is. I know exactly how you feel. So chestnut-back quail-thrush we had before, and now we've got the cinnamon.
I knew I'd seen that one before. And
You're not going to get them down here, but if you're up in the towards, north of Woodner, up into the
do they have
ranges
nice
there.
songs?
Yeah. So that.
We've got the grey stripe thrush
Yeah.
at our place. Oh, the most gorgeous songster.
Okay. So cinnamon, quail-thrush. Now a little shift into the aerial side of the world. Which group do you reckon? It's like the swallow part of the world, but it's not the common swallows or the martins that we see around. Woodswallows. So the common one that we get here, we'll look at in a minute, but every now and then, when we have good years, you get 4 or 5 different species of wood swallow that appear on EP. So, the common one is the dusky, and that's here all year, and yeah.
White-breasted. Well, the markings underneath are not right.
No, definitely.
Is it a white-breasted swiftlets?
Oh wait, yeah, sorry, white breasted because of the tail.
Really?
Was it not the tail? Or is it? No, because the shadow.
It's tricky, isn't it, because of the sunlight behind it?
Yeah, I was right the first time. And then it was that one because it's in a shadow. That was the one I thought first. But then you actually threw me off by saying no.
So masked wood swallow.
Because of the black.
How about this one?
I was looking at the tail. That one's that one. I think no. An ordinary swallow. An ordinary swallow isn't such a thing.
What page is that from?
Different one.
What page is
We're still on the first one.
what page is the mask with swallow?
They're towards the back.
No, it's not with these other swallows.
No.
No. Of course it's not the swallows.
Up there. There you go. Martin Swift wood swallows, 418.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's different.
You're obviously having too much fun down the back here. Comments?
Oh yeah. The orange is the eye is red. Well, it's not red, and then it could be red.
Are you getting feedback all the time?
No.
No.
Oh, no.
No.
No. Just
Oh, yeah.
What we are wondering is if when you play the call, we don't.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Right. If you saw this flying around, you'd see a white rump. That's the key thing. That's the first clue. And it hasn't got the big long tail streamers. And it's got quite a dark head. No. It's the other one. Tree martin. So if you actually got to look at it staring at you, sitting still, amazing eyes. You look at them taking the insects out of the air and they're seeing things that we don't even have any idea are there. And they're flying at 60, 70, 80 kilometres an hour and taking them.
Oh, I was on. Oh, yeah, that one. That's what I said. I said, well, it could be either of those.
All happy with that? So the key thing is you're seeing white underneath, but as soon as they bank the other way, you get the white rump. So that's the clue. It's a fairy martin or a tree martin. If it's in an area where it's going into tree hollows to feed its young and then flying off around and then back to the tree hollows, you know it's a tree martin. The tricky part is getting a good enough look on the wing to actually see that dark head and to separate it from the fairy martin with the reddish head. Okay, tree martin? Sorry, I'm aware I've got 9 more slides to go and I've got 16 more minutes. So. No.
So I shouldn't feel bad about
No. This is the one that people make the mistake with. If you're looking for a dusky wood swallow, you're looking for a white edge on the wing here. Those outer few primaries, 8, 9 and 10, have a white edge to them in the dusky. This one doesn't. Wood swallows. So what was it, 430? 418? 421.
I think the ones we've got are
Probably the dusky, yeah. And they have that big white strip down the primary.
yeah, well, you don't always see that.
Little wood swallow. Now these guys, you won't get them down here, but as you go up into the higher country, you'll get them along ridge lines and along spurs and that sort of thing. And they're much like the dusky in their simple bland colouring, but they don't have that white strip there. And you don't see them nearly as often. So little wood swallow and a pretty bird. Very soft plumage. No. No. It's a lot fluffy, so it's probably got quite young plumage. As a later, the basic plumage is probably a bit stronger, a bit more solid, but you've got those definite white markings down the primaries. Well, it may not be a juvenile, but it's definitely a dusky wood swallow.
Yeah, it looks like that except for the white.
The key thing is it's the only one that's got that. All happy with dusky? Yep. You get these. What's the park up near in the Cleve area? It's sort of a big U shape. I can't think of its name. No. Big. No. Yeah, I can't think of its name. But every time I go there, I see these there. Yeah, it probably is. Yep.
Because then they go.
And it's coming into its adult.
Yeah, to the blue.
Yeah. Hegarton. Thank you. Every time I go to Hegarton, I see them there, and a few parks in that area. They must like to breed in that part of the world. Yeah. Really distinctive bird. Beautiful to see. Quite spectacular on the wing.
That one, the markings on the underside picture.
Yeah. And the white in the head. And then they have a white on the back, which you can't see there. Yeah, stripes through the eye. So white-backed swallow. Pretty bird. Magnificent bird, really fast. Well over 100 kilometres an hour, and you just hear them ripping through the air. They come across Australia from Indonesia. They might spend 4 or 5 months here, seldom land. And you see them with the fronts, but further south. You don't see them up this way anymore. They used to get them periodically appearing on Eyre Peninsula, but I don't think they've recorded them for years. But if you're down on the Fleurieu and a front comes through in summer, you'll get these guys and a few other species all zooming through. Quite amazing. It's a swift. Yep. Fork-tailed.
Yeah, it's a short tail.
And look at their wingspan.
Very big, 43 centimetres.
Yep, it's a big, fast-flying bird. And these are the birds that can't really take off from the ground. They have to be able to fall to get enough speed before they take off. And you've got nests that are made of saliva and things like that, so bird nest soup, that sort of thing. Got it? Common smut? Yeah. And build those mud nests under the eaves, in caves, all that sort of stuff. You get a lot of them around the coastline because they can build their mud nests up on the cliffs on the coastline, up in the hollows, and then they're out feeding for the insects along the coastline. Yep, so welcome swallow, everyone's happy? You do get one that appears in northern Australia now and then, and if you go to Broome you regularly see them, and they have a little bit of a black band around here. Can you tell which one they are? Barn swallow, yeah. We don't get them down south, but in northern Australia every now and then you have to look a bit more closely to detect the barn swallow and keep it apart from the welcome swallow. When you find yourself lying awake at night, just running it through your head.
The thing in the computer.
That's right, that's right. I find if you put clips on your eyes and just stare at the computer. Yeah. Yeah. And remember, we're only doing 300 species, so there's about 9,700, 10,000 to go. So you can build up with time. It's all good. White-browed, well done. You can just see the white-brow. You've got the really dark body compared to the wings. Back to the wood swallows. So that's the male white-browed. The female is quite similar but lighter. So the male and the female. Yeah. And these guys appear now and then on EP.
Are they the ones that get right up close when they go to bed?
Yeah, some of them do, yeah. And you often get these, they'll be calling high up in the sky and you'll just hear a call all day out in their paddock and they're just calling high up and you won't get to see them. And then at night they'll drop down and you might get a chance in a tree or whatever. There's quite a range of species that you need to look out for. The dusky is the one we will see all year, but then these other ones will pop in now and then. Okay, next one. So for this, Ben, we're going to have to go through and for every slide. The temptation to call this one the mast is very great because it looks like a little mast, doesn't it? But mast versus black-faced. Okay, all happy with the black-faced? Yep.
That has to be a red face on them.
White rump, so you can pick that just, but then you've got the red head. The really tricky part is actually seeing that head. To have your binos on, to have your binos on them as they're flying past and they turn up into the sun and it's not a black head, it's a red head. So tree martin versus fairy martin.
Oh, fairy martin.
Yeah. So you're seeing that red head and you can get a little glimpse of that white rump. Just a little bit, not much. So it looks very much like a tree martin, but you won't see them nesting in a tree. Often on EP you get them coming out of the culverts under the roads, but you also get them, because they build their nests in the culverts, you get them in your sheds, and they collect mouthfuls of mud. So you'll see this is another behaviour that you'll see. They'll fly down to a mud puddle and they'll get a mouthful of mud, and then they'll head off and they build those beautiful bottle nests. That's a lot of mouthfuls. Yep. So their nesting habits are very different from the tree martins. They build that mud nest versus...
And where did the tree martin?
Tree martins nest in hollows in trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is where they get their name from.
Yeah, it makes sense.
We had a pardalite nesting in one of those.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
If you build a nest for pardalotes, you don't need to build a very big box, and you have a little tube on them. You can have them all around your house. They love them. Yeah. So that's something you can do to get pardalotes in your area, particularly if you haven't got the hollows, because the little hollows that pardalotes need in mallee country and that, they actually need 50, 60, 80, 100-year-old mallee to get the hollows that they need. So where we've got fires going through regularly, you won't get those hollows. So, fairy martins. Right. Thank you. 3 minutes ahead of schedule. You get an early minute.